the real beginning of the music scene, as I saw it, was not the clubs, but it was the fraternities. My first exposure was, I guess, when I was a junior in high school, and I went over to visit Peter, and the fraternity had a party, and not only did they have beer, but they had a live band. So I kind of, at that moment, just was awestruck and fell in love with the idea of doing some kind of musical venture. But that didn't happen because we moved to Grand Prairie and finished out my senior year up there. But when I went back down, then I was in a fraternity, or pledged fraternity, almost every Friday and sometimes Saturday night. You could either go to a party that we were having, or somebody else was having. And the live music scene really in Austin at that time was based on the fraternities. That was 1966 and 67. That was my freshman year at University of Texas. I went on, I dropped out of UT and ended up going back up to Dallas. Went to a small school up there. That would have been 67 and 68. And while I was up there, I met several bands that were playing in Dallas. In fact, the bass player and the drummer for ZZ Top, I met because they were friends with a mutual friend of mine who had moved up there. At that time, they were playing with Dusty's brother, and they were called the American Blues. They had their hair dyed blue. And so anyway, having that exposure, being around bands that were really good and really, playing a lot, I decided that I wanted to try to get in the band. And the only thing I knew to do was go to music stores. There were no papers like there are now. There wasn't an Austin Chronicle or, any kind of music paper that, where you could put an ad. So people would put an ad like on a 3x5 card up in a music store, guitarists looking for drummer and bass player. And what I found was guitarists looking for a singer. And so I answered that ad, and there was another ad that I answered where it was a full band that was looking for a singer. I auditioned for both of those. The one with the full band, I decided I didn't want to go with them. They wanted to move to California. Then I auditioned, sang, listened to the guy play guitar, and I liked him. He was kind of laid back, and so anyway, we got together a couple of times, and then it was getting to be toward the end of the summer, and he told me, he said, "Well, I'm going to move to Austin." He said, "I've got a house down there, and going to finish up my senior year at University of Texas, but if you come to Austin, look me up." So he gave me his phone number. So I decided I would drop out of Dallas Baptist College and go to Austin. When I got to Austin, I looked him up, and indeed we did get together and worked on some music. And after a couple weeks or a month, he called me up and he said, "Hey, would you like to go audition with a group that's looking for singers and guitar players?" And I said, "Yeah, let's go do it." We went out to their practice place, and it turned out that's where I met Craig Hillis. He was one of guys that were looking for people, and they had a bass player named Rusty Keith, and they had a drummer. I think his name was Jim. I don't remember his last name, but he was more of a country and western type drummer, and he didn't really want to play the kind of music that we were interested in playing, which was pretty much copy rock, top 40 stuff. We ended up getting another drummer, and at that time, there were very few clubs to play in. There was just starting up was a place called the Jade Room, and there's a place called the New Orleans Club. And other than that, it was private parties and fraternities. So we got on the fraternity circuit, but that was really the time that the whole Austin music scene was really starting to blossom. There were enough good bands that wanted to open up their clubs for music. And so even places, in a couple of years, like a Pizza Inn, was dedicating a little space in there for people to play. And that was one of the first places where Stevie Ray Vaughan played, was in a pizza restaurant. And most of the clubs weren't really willing to pay you much money. They'd let you play for tips, which really wasn't very good because most of the people who came didn't have any money. So really what all bands relied on were the fraternities, because they actually paid really well for local bands.